Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. Here we're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be completing Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph and turning on to Daf Pei Beis Amud Beis as well. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Dvarim Anei Hagim Basuda. We pick up today in Siman Kof Ayin Ches, in middle of Sif Beis on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, second line down in the Shulchan Aruch. The bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch, the words of the Ramah that begin with V'chein Naihagin b'medinais elu. Before we begin our learning tonight, our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asunu B'Atzar B'Shivya Ha'im Debein B'Yom B'Bein B'Abasha Hamakayim Yirachem Aleihem V'Yitzim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu L'Oira U'Mishibed L'Geula Hashta B'Gala V'Zvan Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for our real Yosef ben Miriam Rezel, for Meir ben Chayes Sarah, and for Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel. They should have a Refuah Shalema B'Seich Shar Chayli Yisrael. So far here in Siman Kof Ayin Ches, we've been discussing the very complex halachas of Shinui Makom. And we saw yesterday the Shita of the Ramah. The Ramah brought down the Shita of the Yesh Cholkim. And the Yesh Cholkim, there's two primary points of halacha that we would take away from the Yesh Cholkim. The first one is the Yesh Cholkim hold that the whole problem of Shinui Makom only applies to Dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha bimkaimam, only to foods that do not require you to make a bracha achrona in the place where you ate them, in the place where you made the original bracha rishona. So that would be something like a coffee. You make a shahakal on a coffee. When you finish your coffee, you're going to make a barei nefashos. There's no requirement that you make the barei nefashos where you drank your coffee. You could make your barei nefashos anywhere. You make a barei priya eitz on an apple. You eat your apple. You have to make a barei nefashos. There's no halacha that requires you to make that barei nefashos in the same place that you ate the apple. This stands in contrast to something like pas. If you make habracha ha'moitzi lechem and haaretz on lechem, on bread, then you're going to have to bench. You're going to have to say birkas hamazon. The halacha is that you have to bench where you ate the food. So pas is a davar that's tzarich bracha bimkaimai. It needs the bracha achrona to be recited where you ate the food. Mashen kain, the coffee, the apple, those are dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha bimkaiman. They do not require a bracha achrona to be recited where you ate them. The Yesh Cholkim hold that the whole din of Shinui Makom only applies to something like the coffee or the apple, dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha bimkaiman. Over there, the Yesh Cholkim reason that if you're drinking a coffee and you uproot yourself and you go somewhere else, you have effectively cut off that drinking session. You've gotten up and you've gone somewhere else to drink. You have now disconnected yourself from the original bracha rishona because there is nothing anchoring you back to the place where you were. You're not going to be mechuyev to come back. You don't have to come back to make the bracha achrona. So once you get up and you walk away and you make a Shinui Makom, you have effectively separated yourself from the original place where you made the original bracha rishona. And now, if you want to continue drinking, if you want to come back and you want to finish your coffee, you're going to need a bracha rishona. Why? Because you left. You walked away. You terminated your session of drinking and you disconnected yourself from the original bracha rishona. However, if you're having a suda ala pas, if you made a hamoitzi lechem and a haaretz and you ate bread, even if you walk away, you got to come back because you have to come back for birkas hamazon. Over there, we don't look at it and say that you cut off your eating session because you have to come back. So you're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come back. The bracha rishona remains in place. That is the shita of the Yesh Cholkim. Furthermore, the Yesh Cholkim also argue on the Mechaber as to the potency or the power of a Shinui Makom. In the eyes of the Mechaber, we have two we have two different halachic concepts that create a hefsek in a Suda. We have a hesek hadas and we have shinei makom. In the eyes of the Mechaber, a shinei makom is much more potent than hesek hadas. Hesek hadas, when you remove your mind from what you're doing, from what you're eating, hesek hadas requires you to make a new bracha rishona. So, for example, somebody made a bari minim mezainos on a donut, and he ate half his donut, and then he got a phone call, and he was on the phone for a half hour, and then he got off the phone, and he's telling somebody over the phone conversation, and then he looks at this, and he looks at that. Before you know it, he looks at the donut on the table, and he says, yeah, right, I was in the middle of eating a donut. But he was completely mesiach das from eating that donut. By being mesiach das, he lost his bracha rishona. When you eat something, in order for you to be allowed to partake and eat that food and be nana from that food, you have to make a bracha rishona. You make a bracha rishona, the bracha rishona remains in effect so long as you have your mind on the eating and you're connected to the original bracha. Once you're mesiach das, you lose your connection to the bracha, and now you need a new bracha rishona. But when you finish the donut, you can make one bracha achrona, and the bracha achrona is going to pater the donut that you ate before you were mesiach das and the part of the donut you ate after you were mesiach das. Nobody suggests that hesek hadas requires that, oh, I just realized I was mesiach das. So the first thing I need to do is make a bracha achrona on the donut that I ate until now. Now I have to make a new bar mezainos, continue eating the donut, and then make a second ala michya. Nobody suggests such a thing. Hesek hadas only impacts the connection to the bracha rishona. But the bracha achrona, you're going to make one bracha achrona to cover whatever you ate before the hesek hadas or whatever you ate after the hesek hadas. However, shinei makom, says the Mechaber, is far more powerful. Shinei makom, the Mechaber says, completely cuts a Suda or an eating session in two. And therefore, says the Mechaber, when you make a bona fide shinei makom, you get up, you leave your table, you go to the front door, you walk out the front door, you make a real bona fide shinei makom. Says the Mechaber, what you just did is you terminated your Suda. Now, the very first thing you need to do is you need to make a bracha achrona on whatever you ate until now. You can't go ahead, start a second Suda, make a bracha achrona at the end of the second Suda, and pater the second Suda and the first Suda with one bracha achrona. The Mechaber says you can't do that. First, you have to make a bracha achrona on the Suda that you just finished, which means that you need to make a bracha achrona on whatever you ate before the shinei makom. And then, when you're going to continue eating, you're going to make a new bracha rishona, and when you finish, you're going to make another bracha achrona to cover what you ate after the shinei makom. That's the sheet of the Mechaber. Says the Ramah, the Yesh Chalkim say no. The Yesh Chalkim say shinei makom is no more potent, it's no more powerful or damaging than hesek hadas. What it does is it disconnects you from your original bracha rishona. So you're going to need a new bracha rishona if you want to continue eating after your shinei makom. So you made a shahakal on a coffee. Remember, the Yesh Chalkim only hold that shinei makom is a problem by something like a shahakal or a bari priya eitz dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha bimkaimam. So you made a shahakal on your coffee. You walked out your front door. When you come back in, you want to drink coffee. You need a new bracha rishona because you made a shinei makom. Bracha achrona? One bari nefashos, when you finish your coffee, will cover the coffee that you drank before the shinei makom and the coffee that you drink after the shinei makom. So that's the opinion of the Yesh Chalkim that we learned yesterday, brought down by the Ramah. Now, I'm going to use that one of my favorite expressions, where does this come back to us? Let me give you a very classic example. It's Shabbos night. It's Friday night. You came home, you made Kiddush, you washed the Tilas Yadayim, you made Amoitzi on your Lechem Mishnah, you had your fish, and you had your L'chaim after the fish, and you had some challah, and you had your chicken soup, and you're between your chicken soup and your main dish. So the roast chicken or the roast beef and the potato kugel hasn't come out yet. You just had your soup, and somebody reminds you that your neighbor is making a shalom zachar, and your neighbor ate early. So now you want to go to the shalom zachar. Well, according to the Yesh Cholkim, there's no problem of Shini Makayim in this case, because we're dealing with Devarim Hatzrichim Bracha Bimkaimam. You are Kavei Sud ala Pas, you're going to need Berkas HaMazon, and Berkas HaMazon is going to require you to come back to your house, come back to your dining room table, and sit down and bench. It's Devarim Hatzrichim Bracha Bimkaimam. So Shini Makayim is not an issue. So, really, according to the Yesh Cholkim, you could get up from your Shabbos table, walk out the door, go to the neighbor, sit down by the neighbor's dining room table. You want to eat arbus? You could eat the arbus without a bracha rishona, because you're going to eat the arbus based on the hamoitzi that you made in your house. So you're going to eat the arbus. You want to have a beer? You could have a beer. Al smach your suda. So you could eat, you could drink by your neighbor without a bracha rishona. Did you have to bench before you went to your neighbor? No. There's no chiyuv to bench. No problem. You're continuing your suda. Shini Makayim is not an issue, because we're dealing with a suda ala pas. We're dealing with Dvarim Hatzrichim Bracha Bimkaimam. So okay, you went to the neighbor, you had arbus, you had beer. Now you're coming back to your house. You'll come back to your house. Now you could sit down, you could eat your roast chicken, you could eat your potato kugel, you could, have your dessert, and then you'll bench. And the benching is going to be the bracha achrona on whatever you ate by your suda and whatever you ate by the shalom zachar. That is what the halacha would be according to the Yesh Cholkim. Now, we'll tweak it just a little bit. Let's change the case a little bit. Same case. You're holding it the same place in the middle of your suda, and again, you're going to your neighbor for the shalom zachar. You go to the neighbor for the shalom zachar, but you're on a diet, and all they have is cake, and you don't want to eat cake, and you don't want to have a beer, because beer is very fattening. So you decided that all you're going to do is go, sit for a few minutes, listen to a vart, and then you're going to say mazel tov. You're not eating anything. Okay, no problem. So you didn't eat anything. You'll come back home, you'll continue your suda, you'll say Berkas HaMazon, everything is fine and dandy. You don't need a new bracha rishona when you come back to your dining room table, because you didn't interrupt your meal. Shinu Makom is a non-issue. We're dealing with Dvarim Hatzrichim Bracha Bimkaimam. This is what the halacha should be according to the Yesh Cholkim. Now, since I gave you this illustration already, I'm going to jump the gun, and I'm going to tell you another thing that the Mishnah Berurah is going to say you're allowed to do. And that is, let's say what happened is you got up from your Shabbos table, you went to the neighbor, and the neighbor didn't yet start the Shalom Zachar. The neighbor is also in the middle of his Suda. And when you come to the neighbor and you sit down by his dining room table, he's bringing out his roast and his potato kugel. And he says, you know what, you're here already. Why don't you sit down, have some roast, and have some potato kugel? So you do. You sit down, you have some roast, you have some potato kugel, and you have some challah. Okay? You also have some pas. Okay? So you had pas, you had basar, you had meat, you had potato kugel. Now he brings out the shalom zachar. He brings out the shalom zachar. Well, guess what? The shalom zachar is going to be dessert. Right? So you're going to go now, and you're going to sit down, and you're going to eat dessert. Is going to be the shalom zachar. The guy tells you, he says, you know what? You might as well bench here. We're benching now. Maybe we even have a minion. You could chop a rind. You could bench with a minion. So why should you go home now? You're not going to go continue your suda at home. You already had your main dish. You already had your dessert. You had challah. You had pas. You had dessert also. So why don't you just bench now? The Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that you're allowed to bench over there. Since you had pas by your neighbor, you're even really allowed to bench by the neighbor. So this is what should come out based on the Yesh Cholkim. But now we're going to see that the Ramah is going to paskin. The Ramah is going to say, even though really we paskin like the Yesh Cholkim, but not so lichatchila. Okay, let's see what the Ramah says. Says the Ramah, Pei Beis Amud Aleph, bottom line, a little bit before the middle of the line, V'chein noihagin. The Ramah says, V'chein noihagin b'medina selu. we're noyeg like the Yesh Cholkim. We're noyeg like everything I just told you, like the Yesh Cholkim. But, says the Rama, Mikol Mokoim, nevertheless, despite the fact that we're noyeg like the Yesh Cholkim, Lichatchila, says the Rama, Lo Yakar Mimkaimai, you should not get up and leave your place. You should not leave the place of your Suda below bracha, without making a bracha achroina first. So you hear the Rama? The Rama says, really, we paskin like the Yesh Cholkim. But lichatchila, says the Rama, lichatchila, I don't want you to get up and leave your house and make a shina mokayim without benching first. Lichatchila, you want to go to the neighbor for the Shalom Zachar? Bench first. That's what the Rama says. Now, don't jump the gun. I said at the beginning of this Siman, don't jump the gun to halacha l'maisi yet. But the Rama said, we paskin like the Yesh Cholkim, v'chein noyagin, but I'm telling you, lechatchila, don't get up and leave and make a shidduch makayim without benching first. Why? So let's turn the page. So he said, lechatchila lo yaakov imkayim b'loi bracha. Turn to pei beis amid beis. Why? Techayshinon, because we're worried. Shema yishkach milachzar v'lechol. We're afraid that you know what might happen? Maybe you're going to walk out the door, you're going to go to the neighbor for the Shalom Zachar, you're going to start meeting your buddies, you're going to start meeting your friends. You're never going to come back to your house and finish eating and bench. You're going to forget. And that, it would be a huge problem. You're not going to bench. You're never going to bench. You're never going to continue your Suda. That's what the Rama is saying we're afraid of. You're going to get distracted. You're never going to finish your Suda. And therefore, says the Rama, Lechatchila, I don't want you to walk away from your Suda without benching. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. So let's turn back to Pei Beis Amud Aleph, and let's go to Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Lamed Gimel, which is probably about 2/3 of the way up in the Mishnah Berurah. The Rama said, notwithstanding the fact that I told you v'chein noyagin like the Yesh Cholkim, lechatchila lo yakar. Ritzoner loymar. What the Rama wants to say is, av sha'imid be'emtza su'udas pas. Even though we're talking about your Friday night Suda, let's say, you're in the middle of a Su'uda ala pas, you're eating dvar matzrichim bracha bimkaimam, v'roitza lotzei samanas lachzor v'lechel ulevarech, and what you want to do is perfectly in line with the Yesh Cholkim. You want to go out, and then you want to come back, finish your Suda, and bench, which according to the Yesh Cholkim is perfectly fine. According to the Yesh Cholkim, do you need to bench before you leave? No. Why do you need to bench? We're dealing with Dvar Matzrichim Bracha B'Mkaimam. You don't have to bench. You could go next door to the neighbor, and when you finish by the neighbor, you could come back, finish your Suda, and then bench. You don't need any new Bracha Rishonos, and you covered with one benching, according to the Yesh Cholkim. Nevertheless, the Ramah is telling you, Lechatchila lo yetze. Lechatchila, you should not walk out the door without benching first. Why? Because we're afraid that either you're going to go to the neighbor and get distracted, and you're not going to end up coming back and benching. You'll come back and you'll go to sleep. Or maybe what you'll do is, you'll be gone so long that by the time you come back, you're going to be hungry again, and that's the shear that you could no longer bench. That's the shear that we say you can't bench anymore on your Suda, because you waited so long to bench that you're already hungry again. So how could you bench and thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for satisfying you? You're no longer satisfied. So the Mishnah Berurah is telling you that what the Ramah is saying over here is, even though according to the Yesh Cholkim it is perfectly fine for you to walk out your door without benching first, go to the neighbor, do what you want, come back to your house, continue eating without a new bracha rishona, and then do one benching on everything. That's perfectly okay according to the Yesh Cholkim. The Ramah is telling you, lechatchila, you shouldn't do it. Why? Because we're afraid something's going to go wrong. Something's going to go wrong. Either you're just going to forget, or you're going to spend so much time by the neighbor, it's going to be too late for you to bench. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, okay, if that's the concern, then says the Mishnah Berurah, but let's say let's say your friend, your neighbor, when he invited you to the Shalom Zachar, he said, listen, whenever you're ready to come over to me for the Shalom Zachar, whatever you're up to in the Suda, don't worry, come over, I'll be in the middle of my Suda, I'll give you challah, I'll give you roast beef, I'll give you potato kugel, come whenever you want. So now you know I'm not just going to the neighbor for a visit and then coming back home, continuing my Suda and benching. No, now I know l'chatchila that I'm going to the neighbor to continue my Suda. That's what the Mishnah Berurah means here. V'mazminim loy, if they invited you, lechol pas b'mokom acher, to eat bread, to eat challah, to continue your Suda in the other house, so now these concerns of the Ramah are not valid. Because now I was invited to finish the Suda over there. So I'm going to go there, I'm going to finish eating there, and I'm going to bench there. Like I told you, the Mishnah Berurah says you're allowed to do. Like the Mechaber is going to say you're allowed to do in Sif Dalet. Still in all, the Ramah says, L'chatchila, I don't want you to get up and walk away from your table without benching. Why? I'm going to finish my Suda over there and I'm going to bench over there. So the concern of the Ramah doesn't even seem to be a valid concern. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, because the Ramah holds, Derak b'di'evid. It's only b'di'evid. Kishekvar yotza, when you already walked out your front door, Amrina demutar le'lecha l'levarach b'makam hasheni. That's when we say that you could continue your Suda next door and bench next door. Because the truth is, how are you allowed to bench next door? Haven't we been repeating over and over and over again that pas is dvarim shetzrichim bracha bimkaimam? Pas, the whole reason the Eish Cholkim say that Shina Makom is not a problem by pas is because halacha requires you to come back to bench. So why are we suddenly saying that you're allowed to finish your Suda next door and bench next door? So explains the Mishnah Berurah, because that's only b'di'evid. B'di'evid kishekvar yotza amrina demutar le'lecha l'levarach b'makam hasheni tegam sham mekaymayu. Since you're in middle of your Suda and you went over there and you ate pas over there, so your mom is continuing your Suda over there. If you bench over there, it's considered that you benched bimkaimai. In other words, bimkaimai doesn't necessarily have to mean bimkaimai harishain. When we say that it's dvar matzrichim bracha bimkaimam, it means that you must bench where you ate your Suda. If you got up and you went next door, and when you were next door you ate pas, and you finished your Suda next door, then that now became mikaimai. That became the place of the Suda, and you're allowed to bench there. But the Ramah says that's only b'di'evid. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is telling me. The Ramah says that's only b'di'evid. That's all l'chatchila. L'chatchila, we want you to bench by your table where you ate the Suda. So the Ramah is telling you, l'chatchila, I don't want you, even the Eish Cholkim notwithstanding. L'chatchila, I don't want you to get up and walk away from your table without benching. Ava l'chatchila, mitzvah levarach b'mkayim she'achal kaidim she'yetzei. You already had a chiv to bench by your table. So why are you getting up and walking out? Unless you mamish had das when you made the original hamoitzi. You knew this all along. You were invited to finish the Suda already in shul. In shul, he already invited you, that tonight you should finish the Suda by me. So if you had such das when you made the original hamoitzi, does chashiv ishtei mekayim mutar af l'chatchila. Then he says it's okay even l'chatchila. V'afilu mi bayis l'bayis ma'ani machshavte l'deyazu, v'chein nohagu kishahachal l'sudas nisuin shemechavim mitfil l'lechol sham. The Mishnah Berurah says apparently they used to have weddings where they did this. People would get up in middle of the Suda and go to a chasana. And it was in the middle of the Suda. They finished the Suda by the chasana. But they had das right away by the Hamoitzi. So what do we see over here? So far we have, yes, v'chein noihagen like the Yesh Cholkim. But l'chatchila, the Ramah does not want you to walk away from your table without benching. That's the shita of the Ramah. Unless you had das when you made the Hamoitzi, that you're going to get up, go next door, eat pas next door, finish your Suda next door, and bench next door. Then you're okay. But to get up, go to the Shalom Zachar in middle of your Suda, and then come back and bench in your house, l'chatchila the Ramah doesn't want you to do that. Oiskad Lamedal Mim Kaimai says the Chavetz Chaim b'toisvis for Rosh mashma. In Toisvis and the Rosh, it's mashma de'ein lahachmir bazeh, that you don't have to be machmir like this concern of the Ramah that l'chatchila you can't do this. Rak kishayotzei amanas lahaflig, unless you know that I'm going next door for a long time, for a couple of hours. But if you're in the middle of your Friday night Suda and you want to go next door to say Mazel Tov by Shalom Zachar, says the Mishnah Berurah from Tais the Rosh, it's mashba, you do not have to be machmir like this Ramah. You could go next door, you don't have to bench first, you could go next door, you could chop some arbus and a little beer, and then come back and continue your Suda, lichatchila. Even if you didn't have das when you made the Hamoitzi. And you don't have to worry about this Ramah that says that it's only b'di'evet. Now the Mishnah Berurah is bringing down this Taisus, Shitas Taisus and Shitas Arash. It seems to me that he's being machriya that way. You're going to go and come, mutter, it's mutter. Ois kat lamed hey, beloy bracha. The Ramah l'chatchila doesn't want you to walk out without making Birkas Hamazon first. Says the Mishnah Berurah b'chedusha Rabbi Akiva Eiger Masha Kasa Bazeh. Take a look at Rabbi Akiva Eiger, what he has to say about this. V'ayin b'bir halacha, and take a look at this very lengthy bir halacha dibra maska b'loy bracha shechranu ledina, where the Chavetz Chaim says, I am machriya halacha l'maisa. Da'afta l'chatchila b'vaday nachin linikar Ramah shaloi lotzeis l'dvar harishus. Even though l'chatchila we should really do like the Ramah, and for a dvar rishus you shouldn't walk out without benching, unless you're doing it just to go and come. Mikamakim kishayotzei, but if you do it, if you do get up, and you are going to leave your table, and you're going out for a while, still, says the Mishnah Berurah, mikamakim kishayotzei ein loy levarech, you should not make Birkas Hamazon first. Im yitziyasi hu amanas lachsa v'ligmar sudasi. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, if you look at the Bir Halacha, I'm machriya in the Bir Halacha. It's Friday night in the middle of Yesuda, and really l'chatchila, if you're going to get up and go to the neighbor for a long time, really we should do like the Ramah, and really, I would think that, you really shouldn't do this. But if you are going to do it, don't bench first. Why not? Because he's afraid of getting into the problem of bracha she'ein tzricha. B'kamakom kishiyotzei ein loy levarech im yitziyasi hu amanas lachsa v'ligmar sudasei. If you want to get up and go to the Shalom Zachar, al das that you're going to come back home and finish your Suda at home and then bench, then says the Mishnah Berurah, you should not bench before you go. Why? The chashiv ka'imid be'emtza Suda, because really lahalacha, you're in middle of your Suda. Lahalacha, we paskin like the Yesh Cholkim, so there is no shini makayim by dvar matzrichem bracha bim kaimam, and we're talking about a Suda ala pas. So really, the walking out the door is not a hefsek. The Ramah is telling you the reason I want you to bench before you walk out the door is not because he's casting some doubt on paskening like the Yesh Cholkim. No, he says v'chein noyagin. We paskin like the Yesh Cholkim. And if we paskin like the Yesh Cholkim, that means that Shinei Mokim is a non-issue by Dvar Matzrichim Bracha Bim Kaimam. So it is not a hefsek. If it's not a hefsek, then if you walk out the door and you go to the neighbor by the Shalom Zachar, you are in middle of your Suda. And you are allowed to eat whatever you want to eat now based on your original hamaitzi. And when you come back to your own dining room table, you're allowed to eat the potato kugel without a new bracha rishayna based on your original hamaitzi. And you're allowed to bench, and you're allowed to bench one time and cover everything you ate before you walked out the door, everything you ate by your neighbor, and everything that you ate when you came back to your table. So in that case, how could the Ramah tell you, well, I'm afraid that you might forget to bench, therefore I want you to bench now? How could you bench now? It's a bracha she'ein tzricha. I'm making an extra benching. Not only am I making an extra benching, I'm making an extra benching, and by making the extra benching, I'm forcing myself to make additional brachas rishaynos. How am I allowed to do that? The bracha she'ein tzricha. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, Mikamakim, Kishiyoitze ein loy levarich, im yitziyasi yu amanas lachsa v'lim v'sudasai. T'chashiv kaibim b'emtza suda, v'yesh pezach shasha de bracha she'ein tzricha, rakimu mishar she'efshe she'yaflik harbe. Unless you know, or you're at least worried that you might go out for a long time, then nachin yoiser she'yavarich berkas hamazik kishiyoitze. Then it is proper that you should bench before you go out. Why? What happened to bracha she'ein tzricha? No. Because if you realize that you might be gone for a long time, that means that you think it's reasonable to assume that you're going to be gone for a long time, you're going to make a hefsek in your Suda, you're not going to be able to bench anymore because you're already going to be hungry again. So then it's perfectly appropriate to bench now. Oiskat Lamed Vav on Pei Beis on Beis, the Chayshinan. We're worried you might forget to bench. Even if you only ate peros, you're worried you made a bar priya eitz. Now bar priya eitz, peros, that's dvarim she'enam tzrichim bracha b'mkaimam. U'sha'ari dvarim, mashbe b'kam achrayim b'denach lizar lechatchila shelo latzes b'mkaimai ad she'yavarich bracha achrayim. By a bar priya eitz, if you were sitting in your house and you were eating an apple, so now Shinei Makayim is an issue. Shinei Makayim is an issue, right? So if you walk out the front door, if you want to go back and eat more apple, you're going to need a new bracha rishayna. But really you only have to make one bar nefashos. So you could be eating apple now, you could walk out the door, come back in, make a new bar nefashos, and when you finish, make a new bar parades, and when you finish, you could make one bar nefashos. But says the Mishnah Berurah that the Achrayim say, don't walk away without making a bracha achrayna. Don't, even though you can make a bracha achrayna down the street, don't walk away without making a bracha achrayna, because we're afraid once you walk away, you might forget to make the bracha achrayna. Okay, continues the Ramah, the top line, Pei Beis Amid Beis. Miu l'tzarech mitzvah iveres kigoyin she'gias ban tefila muter. But, says the Ramah, even though I'm telling you l'chatchila, I don't want you to walk away from your Suda without making a bracha achrayna. Let's say you're in the middle of eating a late lunch, and you realize, oh my goodness, it's going to be shkia, I'm going to miss mincha. Right next door there's a minyan for mincha. You could go next door, you're in the middle of a Suda ala pas. The Ramah said, really, I don't like you to walk away without benching first, but if you want to go chat mincha next door, you could go chat mincha next door before shkia, and then come back and bench afterwards. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. If you remember, back in Sif Beis, back in Sif Beis, on Pei Aleph Amid Beis, 3 lines from the top, the Mechaber gave me a very interesting case. He said, Ochal b'mizracha shel te'ena zu. If you were sitting down and you were eating on the east side of a fig tree, a big fig tree, uba lecha b'ma'arava, and then maybe the sun started beating on you, so you decided to go to the western side of the tree. So you went around this big tree, and now you sat down leaning against the other side of the tree. The Mechaber said, that's a Shinei Makayim, and you have to make a new bracha. So the Mechaber said that constitutes Ashina Makim. So now, that means that in the world of the Mechaber, whether we're talking about that you're eating a salami sandwich, so it's dvar matzrichim bracha bim kaimam, or whether you're eating an apple or drinking a coffee, dvar she'enam tzrichim bracha bim kaimam, the Mechaber holds that shina makim is a problem by all types of foods. So no matter what it is that you're eating in the park, leaning against the tree, if you go from one side of the tree to the other side of the tree, and it's a big tree, so you can't see your original eating place from the other side, the Mechaber said you need to make a new bracha rishona when you go to the other side. According to the Mechaber, you would need to make a bracha achrona first on whatever you ate on the first side. Now, according to the Yesh Cholkim of the Ramah, this would only be an issue by a coffee or by an apple, by dram she'enam tzrichim bracha bim kaimam. And it would only be a problem with the bracha rishona. You would have to make a new bari pri'aitz when you go to the western side of the tree. But you would only make one bari nefashis. Okay, that's what we saw previously in Siv Beis. Now, let's go to Siv Gimel, where at face value, the Mechaber seems to be giving me a very similar case. Says the Mechaber, Yesh mi sha'omer, and this is brought down from an Orchos Chaim. Yesh mi sha'omer, there is one who says, She'emahaya bagan, if you're in an orchard, v'roitza lechal mi peiros kol ilon v'ilon, and you want to taste the fruits of all the different trees. So maybe you're in an apple orchard, and in the apple orchard, you have a few rows of trees where they're growing honey crisps, and then you have a few with Cortlands, and a few with Macintosh, and a few with Golden Delicious, and Granny Smiths. Or maybe you have apples, pears, and oranges, I don't know, all sorts of different fruit trees. But what you want to do is, you want to wander around the orchard, and you want to taste from all the different trees. So you're standing in one area of the orchard, and you pluck a beautiful honey crisp, and you make a bari pri'aitz on the honey crisp. You know that there are Granny Smiths down at the other end, and you want to eat some Granny Smiths. And there are Macs in the middle, and you want to eat some Macs. So Yesh Bishaimer, the Orchos Chaim says, She'emahaya bagan, if you're in the orchard, v'roitza lechal mi peres kol ilon v'ilon, and you want to taste from each tree, keven shebirech al ilon echad, once you made a bracha bari pri'aitz on the fruit of one tree, of the honey crisps, ein tzarich levarech al acherim, you don't have to now make a new bari pri'aitz when you want to taste the Granny Smiths on the other side of the orchard. But, says the Mechaber, caveat, v'hu shebishah shebirech hayadaita lechal b'yisam acherim. But this only works if you had das. If when you made the bari pri'aitz on the honey crisp, you had das that I'm going to be tasting the fruits of all the trees all around the orchard, then you could get away with one bracha. But if you didn't have das, then you have to make a bari pri'aitz on each one. Now right away we have to understand what's the difference between this case. You're in an orchard, and you ate one fruit from the tree down there, and you're eating another fruit from the tree down there, and we're saying if you had das by the bari pri'aitz to cover the whole orchard, you can get away with one bari pri'aitz. But earlier the Mechaber told me, you're sitting on the east side of the tree, and you made a bari pri'aitz, and you started eating the apple, and then you went to the west side of the tree, boom! You got to make a bar nefashos of what you ate in the east, and you got to make a new bracha rishona what you want to eat in the west, and you're going to have to make a bracha achrona after you finish eating what you ate in the west. What's the difference over here between these two halachas? So let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah's kat lamed zayin, ein tzarich levarich. You don't have to make a new bracha when you go to the other end of the orchard and eat the trees on the other end of the orchard. Says the Mishnah Berurah, va'afilu ein raya mekaymai, and this is true, even if you cannot see the second place, even if you can't see the first place from the second place. So when you get to the max, you can't even see the honey crisps, where you made the original bari pri'aitz. Still, you can get away with one bracha. So va'afilu ein raya mekaymai, sha'yilana is mafsikin, even though you can't see your original place because the trees are blocking you. And this is not to be compared to the Mechaber's case in Sif Beis, where he talked about sitting on the east side of the date tree, the fig tree, ubal lechel b'marava, and now you want to eat from the west side of the fig tree, ditzarich levarich. Where over there the Mechaber said you do have to make a bracha. Why? What's the difference between the two? Says the Mishnah Berurah first, the kan ma'risha mukaf mechitzos. Over here, we're talking about an apple orchard that is surrounded by fences. And therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, the choshev k'mayimakim echad kanal. Now, over here, in Sif Gimel, we're dealing with an apple orchard that's mukaf mechitzos. Since it's mukaf mechitzos, the entire orchard is like bayis echad. It's like you're in one house. And when you go from the Honey Crisps to the Max, you know what you're doing? You're going mecheder lecheder. It's like you're in one house and you're going from one room to the other. And the Ramah told us earlier in Sif Aleph that if you go mecheder lecheder, that's a shini makayim, but if you have das, it's not a shini makayim. The Ramah said, if you make a bracha by the dining room table, al das, that you're going to go upstairs to the bedroom and downstairs to the pantry in the middle of the meal, then going mecheder lecheder b'bayis echad does not constitute a shini makayim. Over here, the Mishnah Berurah says, you know why the Mechaber says that when you go from the east side of the tree to the west side of the tree, you have to make another bracha. But when you go from the Honey Crisps to the Max, you don't? Because when he was talking about the east side of the fig tree to the west side of the fig tree, he was talking about when you're sitting in an open park. And it's not mukaf mechitzis. So it's not bayis echad. So over there, the shina makayim, once you go to the other side of the tree and you can't see the east side from the west side, you made a shina makayim, you need a new bracha. But over here by the apple orchard, it's surrounded with mechitzis. So it's a bayis echad. And going from the Honey Crisps to the Max is going mecheder lecheder. And das helps mecheder lecheder. So if you had das when you made the Bari Priyates, that you could eat from the Honey Crisps and the Max and the Golden Deliciouses, you could get away with one bracha. That's the first explanation. So what's the difference between Sif Beis and Sif Gimel? In Sif Beis, you were talking about a park that's not mukaf mechitzis. In Sif Gimel, we're talking about an orchard that is mukaf mechitzis. V'yesh me'achroinim shepershu. Then there are achroinim that want to explain the difference between these two cases a little bit differently. They want to say D'mayri bein mukaf mechitzis, that over here in Sif Gimel, we're also talking where the orchard is not mukaf mechitzis. Ooh, so what's the difference between here and there? V'tama heter bazehu mishum da'ashah yadaita l'zem etchila. No, it's not mukaf mechitzis. The only difference between this case and the case of the east of the fig tree and the west of the fig tree is over here by the Honey Crisps and the Max, he had das. That's the difference. The difference is that over here he had das, and over there by the east side and the west side, he didn't have das. V'yesh b'achroinim shepershu d'mayri bein mukaf mechitzis. V'tama heta b'zehu b'shem she'yadaita l'zem etchila. U'kumay shekasav le'el b'hagad d'daita mahani af b'cheder l'cheder. These achroinim hold that even if the orchard is not mukaf mechitzis, going from the Honey Crisps to the Max is still called mecheder l'cheder b'bayis echad. And the truth is, going from the east of the tree to the west of the tree is also going mecheder l'cheder b'bayis echad. But over there, by the east side and the west side, the Mechaber Paskin, you needed a new bracha, because over there, the fellow didn't have das when he made the Bari Priyates. Over here, by the Honey Crisps and the Max, he had das. That's the whole difference. Well, according to these achrayim, then Gamla Indian Mizracha Shalteina Mahani Daitoi. Really, in Sif Beis, where we spoke about the east side of the fig tree and the west side of the fig tree, das would have helped over there too. Because both of these cases are really the same. They're both going mecheder l'cheder b'bayis echad. But over here he had das, over there he didn't. And the reason the Mechaber sort of casts aspersions on this opinion. He brings it down as a yesh mi she'omer, is because it's a big chiddush. Mishum de'ein din zeh barer de lahani daitoi be'ein mukaf bechitzos. How are we looking at this as mecheder lecheder bebayis echad, so that das should be effective if it's not mukaf bechitzos? What makes it a bayis echad? It doesn't have a roof. It's not walled in. So what makes it mecheder lecheder that das should help? And that's why it's a very big chiddush. And in the Mishnah Berurah he says, "Duhu rak shitas haravid," because this really would only be true based on a ravid. And this only works, said the Mechaber, the Hoyodaitoi. He had das when he made the original Bar Praetz that he's going to eat from the Honeycrisps, the Max, and the Granny Smiths. And again, why does it work? According to everybody, according to the first opinion brought down in Ois Katan Lamed Zayin and the second opinion in Ois Katan Lamed Zayin, this is working based on considering it Mecheder L'Cheder. According to the first pshat in Ois Katan Lamed Zayin, it's Mecheder L'Cheder because the orchard is surrounded by mechitzas. So it's Mecheder L'Cheder, and das helps. According to the second opinion, it's called Mecheder L'Cheder, even though it's not Mukaf Mechitzas, which is a huge chiddush. But according to either one, it's based on this being called going Mecheder L'Cheder, and therefore das helps. B'chai Adam Klal Nun Tes Re'isi. In the Chai Adam, Mishnah Berurah brings down the Chai Adam, and he says that he saw in the Chai Adam, Shemechalik Be'inyan Zeh, where the Chai Adam digs down even deeper, and he makes another chilik. He says, Re'isi Shemechalik Be'inyan Zeh, Bein Mukaf Mechitzas Le'ena Mukaf Mechitzas, De Be'mukaf Mechitzas, Loi Be'inan Daitoi Beferish. The Chai Adam says, if the orchard was Mukaf Mechitzas, then you don't need das beferish. That when you made the Bar Priya 8s, when you walked into the orchard and you made your first Bar Priya 8s on the honey crisps, I had beferish das that I'm going to eat from all the different trees. If it's Mukaf Mechitzas, you don't need das beferish. Elafilu mistama. Even if you made the bracha on the honey crisps minastam without any specific das. Amrinon, we say the daite al kalo ilonis. You were going apple picking and you went into the orchard and you know that there are Honeycrisp, Max, Golden Delicious, and Granny Smith. We assume the default is that you made the Bar Priates with the idea that you're going to eat from all the different trees. Unless you say, I only had das to eat from one tree, beferish, and then I changed my mind, gam lechol me'asheni, does tzarch levarch. Ube'ena mukaf bechitzas, but if the orchard is not mukaf bechitzas, says the Chai Adam, then be'inan sheyedaitoi b'shas bracha gam al hasheni. Then you had to have specific das that I'm going to eat from all the trees. And if you didn't have such das, then I feel a roya is becoming a rishon gam kedin moil kevacheda mukaf bechitzas. And it brings us down from the Taz and the Derech HaChaim. Okay. So again, so far what we saw over here in Siv Gimel is the Mechaber brought down this Yesh Mi She'omer. You're going apple picking and you went into the apple orchard. You made a bracha on the honey crisps, but you want to eat the honey crisps, the Max, the Granny Smiths, etc., etc. So there's a Yesh Mi She'omer that you could get away with one bracha, so long as you had das when you made that bracha. The first opinion brought down in the Mishnah Berurah, and it sounds to me like he likes that one better, even though, it's brought down from a Magen Avram, and we know that he always gives preference to the Magen Avram. That the reason for this is, since the orchard is mukaf bechitzas, it's considered mokayim echad. It's like a bayis echad. And when you go from tree to tree, it's like you're going mecheder lecheder bebayis echad, and therefore das helps. Okay, we're going to stop over here because Hashem will conclude Sif Gimel next time. But Baruch Hashem, we did at least half of the Mishnah Berurah here on Pei Beis and Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah, discussing limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shem should send Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnasa, and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Geula Shleima with the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Beherev Yameinu Amen. Be well.